to order at 12:11. And thank you all for coming, and we're going to walk through this. It'll be much smoother next month because I won't be here. No, that's a joke. Okay, got it. So, without further ado, I would entertain a motion to approve today's agenda and the minutes from our, and you don't have the minutes because I haven't done them, so we're not going to approve those. I'll have to send to y'all post-mortem. Sorry. Okay, so could I have a motion to, hang on. Mike didn't get it either.
I sent it to him. I sent it to Mike and to.
I know. We'll hang in there with him.
He needs to check his email.
Mike is out in the field. I just talked to him a minute ago. He's up in, I forget which county, but he's not even in the area.
Yeah,
He might not have. He might not have cell service.
he usually comes in, calls in on his mobile.
He ran into the same problem I did, and then it was asking for a password and some other things. And then once I finally got in, it said the meeting is invalid. So.
Right. And we don't, it's the same link Michael said. He hadn't changed the link, just copy and used it. And I had to re-register to get on this morning, but apparently we'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
So could I have a motion though to approve today's agenda? And we'll discuss that when we get down to the web stuff.
A motion to approve the agenda.
Who was it?
Blake.
Okay, thanks, Blake. Thank you all so much for coming. We've got a lot and it's busy. At least you got out of the heat, right? How much everything seems to be dying at this time. Let's see. Amy's trying to log on. So we'll just skip the treasurer's report right now, and we're gonna go down, and on our agenda we have a nomination for president, and we would like to open that to our members right now. Would anyone like to be president that has a burning desire to do this? Because our president, remember, last month left us to go to the Pacific Northwest.
What a lame excuse.
I know it. Well, in the meantime, I've spoken with Mr. Boating, and he's expressed an interest to, in the future, maybe step up as president. And I told him that I would step up to president if y'all were acceptable to it, and he could be vice president, and we could do our minutes via AI, which we're doing that today. It actually puts our conversations together and points of interest, etc.
I'd make a motion to approve that request.
Well, don't you want no discussion?
I know you guys.
Well, we have.
Yeah, I think Steve just made the motion because he was afraid that somebody might try to nominate him for something.
Amen.
It worked out of my mouth.
Well, any more?
I second Steve's motion.
Yeah, if you need a third, I got your third.
Oh, man. Now, this
So,
is.
and Megan, since you're new, we're not going to nominate you for anything, but next meeting you won't be new. So so you're free game then. We'll nominate you for something then. I'm just kidding.
So next meeting would be a good one to not attend.
No, no, I have a totally different agenda. If you come to 3 meetings, then you're on the board.
Yeah.
You have to show some interest.
All right, 3 minutes it is. I just appreciate y'all letting me join today, so thank you.
Oh, we're just glad to have you. The more, the better.
Hey,
And
where's Megan working at? Or what does she do?
Sure, I'm actually with Texas Chapter ISA.
Okay. Welcome.
Oh, that's where, so you took over for the, like proctoring and stuff like that?
So if y'all remember Misty Perez,
Yeah.
so I'm the program manager. So I do I create CEUs. I feel like I've created CEUs for some of you. I do membership. I do whatever else basically Gene and John
whatever
asked.
else they throw at her,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, I think I received an email or something you had, because I think my proctoring credentials have expired and I was supposed to renew or something like that, so. I
Yes.
never get an email from you. I was trying to figure out where I knew your name from, so.
She's been at a lot of the conferences, Chris. Like Texas Trees, and I think the Urban Forestry one up here, correct, Megan?
Yeah, yes, I was there too. So yeah, I think I got to meet some of you there also in person and at Tree Conference. So I've been there about a year, so they don't seem to mind. So I plan on sticking around.
They haven't run you off yet.
Not yet.
Well, welcome. We're just glad to have you. I mean, the more the better. So back to this nomination and all of that, we have a nomination, we have a second and we third. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Just anybody not want to do this? Any nays? Okay. Motion pass. And I would just like to add a caveat to that. This will be the board until our January membership meeting. And at that meeting, we are thinking that it's just not going to be a meeting. We're going to have a party. And it's not going to be for the board. It's going to be for the membership and everybody's coming. Because it's about time we had a party. Okay? And I just happen to know how to do those. And so we'll have a party. Is that okay? Anybody opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Man, I gotta get y'all in person so we can really get together and have some fun. Now, secretary nomination, is AI okay with everybody? Any discussion on that? Because we'll still take, we'll have notes, but we can always go back to the regular written decide to. Okay. I think we already did that rainbow. I'm gonna move on, guys. If there's no change to that AI on the secretary thing. No? Okay,
Let's see how it works.
okay. And Chris, do you have, I think we already did an update on that rainbow workshop. Did you go to that, Blake?
I did not. I was signed up and of course something came up. Work related and I could not make it. But I think I had one of my supervisors went and said it was pretty good.
I was just wondering, how many people attended? Do you know, Chris?
I do not. I did not attend. And I've been trying to get James to, so James Casey is our rainbow rep for Texas, and he hasn't attended very many meetings, but we need to get him more on a regular basis.
Okay. I need
But
to
no,
read.
I don't have any information from that workshop.
Okay. Did anybody else go to that last rainbow workshop? It was at one of the rec centers in Dallas. And they were using
There's
like,
not the new Singing Hills. We're exiting down on Patrol Way, South Dallas. Was that March? I think. Was it that long? No, maybe May.
right.
But I think maybe 30 to 40 people were there.
Yeah, that was a good one too. I just wondered because we didn't, inadvertently, it didn't go up on the website. I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any hard feelings over that, so I need to reach out to Jim. And the next part on the agenda is the aerial survey that Mr. Sills got this wonderful gentleman to go out and do aerial photography just as the ash were emerging. And that could give a, you know, with the, if it's interpreted, then that could give us an estimate on how many ash, etc. Give us some data to work with. But that would have to be interpreted by the Texas Forest Service. And so our liaison to the Texas Forest Service is Mac Martin. And I called Mac and we talked for a long time. And he said that, you know, they've done so many surveys and that I just heard that they're doing a boots on the ground survey of the Trinity River Forest. And he said that, you know, Dallas really hasn't decided what they're going to do, and that he felt that those, that they could, in the future, if they needed that information, they could interpret it. But right now they had, they could use their resources in a different direction because they needed them, you know, fight fires and all kinds of stuff and all the education they're doing. And like we heard, Mike's out gathering honeybees for Texas A&M. So with that, all that being said, we're going to just kind of table the aerial survey and hang on to that information until it's needed. And then shade keeper training is, we're going to start that on November 4th. That's the indoor training at the Grand Prairie Library. And that's the library, Betty Womack Library. And that will be from 1 to 5 p.m. And that's when we'll do the indoor portion. And then on November 18th, we'll do the outdoor portion. That's where we go through a little bit of inventory, etc. And then on February 3rd, we do fruit tree pruning. So that's interesting. That's always fun too. So if you're interested, just contact me. I haven't seen Mr. Pataka in a long time, Jim, but he's on that, and Mr. Good were on the shade keeper committee. If anyone would like to step up and play on that committee, what we're doing is training people that can be used in local communities to do inventory, planting, pruning, etc. So they would be for each individual community, because as you go to those communities, they're all going to have different regulations on how you can use these volunteers. And they may want to put them through a background check, etc., etc. So we can always use help on that. And I don't want to have a meeting by myself, so I haven't set one up. But I'm still going to do this training if anybody wants to come and play. Mr. Sills will be there. I know Mike will be there, because we always do this together. And then, so if you don't want to step up right now, I'll just call you.
Susan, can I ask you something real quick?
Sure, please.
Is that something that y'all need CEUs, ISA CEUs created for either the people leading them or anybody doing them? Would that be useful?
Well, they're community people. The only people that would need CEUs would be those of us that are training.
Do you want them?
Oh, not right now, but we'll call you.
Okay, that's good.
No, we appreciate it because we do a lot of training, and those CEUs help. And saluting branches. I'm going to let Mr. Chris take over now.
Okay, saluting branches. So saluting branches, for those of you who are following it on the national website, is actually September the 20th. But that's also the day of Waco, the Waco conference kicks off. So what we had to do last year, and we're going to do again this year, it'll be, so all of Texas locations, which there should be, well, there was 4 last year. I think we're only going to have 3 because the word was that we did not have a site leader for the National Cemetery here in Dallas. Typically, I need to confirm that, but typically they don't have a real big turnout. You know, maybe about just a handful of workers, and then the daughters of Susan, help me out on that. Who shows
Daughters
up
of the
there?
American Revolution,
Daughters
DAR.
of the American Revolution. So, but we're set for Butler Nelson Cemetery again this year. The cadets from Lincoln High School will, the junior ROTC will post the colors, and then I don't know how many are going to register. Last year we had probably about 25. It was a great event. Mark and Amy and some of Amy's arborists actually did a really great job of working with the cadets, kind of telling them about arboriculture opportunities. They loved it. The school loved it because they used it as a career day, I think they called it. So anyways, just before the call, I did get a hold of Sergeant Henderson, is the commander for those cadets, and he's working on getting them all registered. We have a food truck. I haven't done a very good job of, last year I did a really, I had Husqvarna and some other giveaway, some prizes to give away. This year, I don't know, I haven't gotten any responses. So as of right now, I don't have any sponsors for giveaway stuff, I'm thinking that my contact for Husqvarna isn't any good anymore. So I just need to do some digging. But if anybody has any ideas for sponsors or equipment that we can give away at a raffle, it's just a really nice end of day event. We eat lunch and then we give away a few items and then we clean up. So,
What was the date again?
the date is September the 27th. Again, when you register, it's going to say September 20th. But
Disregard.
that's just because are not able to change the 3 locations in Texas. They had to keep them all September 20th, but they will send out emails that the 27th is the actual event. So, and that's for all of Texas. So I think San Antonio does one, and Houston, Dallas, or there should have been 2 in Dallas, but I'm not sure on that now. So if you have any questions, though, I can answer those. But great event if you have never attended before, even if you're just going to come and hang out and have lunch.
What about something for the kids? The JROTC. Are we gonna give them we've given them?
Yeah, we haven't. Well, we usually just gave like a little gift bag for the cadets that the color guard. So
Okay.
there'll be probably about 4 cadets that will dress out in full uniform and post the colors at the beginning of the day. So
I'll get it for you.
yeah, we need, so, but let's I would say let's splurge and get something for all of them. Last year we had 25, 30, so
Yeah,
kind of
we had
30.
36
we
the
get some
year
stuff.
before.
It's not like it won't we couldn't use it for some other event too, if we don't give them all out.
Okay, I'll do 40.
What else?
Um,
I bring it up to speed. That's about all I have for that. I do need help. If anybody has any ideas for sponsors that could give this for raffle items, I'm looking for that.
yeah, chainsaws go over real well.
I know, right? So,
McMaster,
if I can't get a Husqvarna, I'll try steel.
Hey, I can't believe with your position with TCIA, you can't get a chainsaw out of somebody.
I just said, well, I've been busy, so
I-
I've truthfully haven't been working on it very hard, so I'll.
Just giving you a hard time, Chris.
I know you.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you so much, Chris. You've really been working hard on that. And I'll help you out with some giveaways because I won't be there. I'm gonna be on the beach. For BBB 23, the beach's birthday bash number 2, established in 2022. And now we're doing 23. So I won't be there and I won't be here for the next meeting, but you're being in great hands with Mr. Mark Bodie as our new vice president. And then EAB and additional assistance. Chris, were you mentioning something about they're gonna do on the ground EAB inventory?
No. So Dallas is so we've got a vendor which is Davy. They won the bid for our inventory. So what's really cool about that is that we're going to be inventorying. So Davy Resource Group and a company called Gree Hill have teamed up, and so all of our street trees are going to be captured using the ground LiDAR, which I know Steve would be excited about that. Which I'm super excited about getting that data. Denton has already done it. I think they did the entire city of Denton in I don't know, 3 weeks or something.
Yeah, I talked to what's his
Blake,
name at our conference. He was really impressed.
Yeah, so they've already have the data. I'm kind of wanting to get with who's the
What's his-
forester over there?
I can't remember his name. That's
Somebody help me out.
the Denton Forester guys.
Where at?
Denton. Who's the forester over at Denton? City forester.
Hampton?
I can see him standing.
Haywood.
Are you talking, you said Denton?
Haywood. It's Haywood.
Haywood, yeah.
His first name's Haywood. So Haywood is I would want to get with Haywood and see if he's proofed any of the LiDAR, because so this Gree Hill says that they're able to capture species in the 90 percentile of accuracy. So I was hoping that Denton could prove, ground proof that and let us know what the actual percentage was on that. So I'm excited for that. But so Parks is going to do a kind of a hybrid of they're going to do the ground LiDAR, then they'll do they have a tracked unit that can go through the parks, and then of course they'll have to do some in person boots on ground inventory. Great Trinity Forest is planning on doing entirely boots on the ground. In our meeting, they said they were not going to do sampling; they were going to do a actual inventory. I don't know how far that's going to get them, how much ground they can cover. I think they're only going to be capturing trees greater than 8 inches DBH.
That's
Am I missing anything? Blake, were you in any of those discussions?
No, no, you're good. I've kind of, since I've taken on a new role here this year, I've I'm kind of out of the EAB deal. We've got 2 to 3 other semi-new employees that are actually taking over the EAB. I'm helping them out. But they're actually the ones that have been going out and surveying ash trees this summer.
And I think they were gonna focus on parks where they had a high concentration of ash trees, you know, so when, of course, they're not gonna be able to start until, so the other thing with the LiDAR, you don't want them capturing that data unless the trees are leafed out. So probably the earliest we would be starting is going to be, I don't know, I think March is even too early, but probably April. What you think, Steve? I guess it really is dependent on, you know, some years we get the early leaf out and some we get a late leaf out. So it's just really dependent on what our leaf situation looks like. But we need to have leaves on the tree when they capture the data using LiDAR.
Yeah, ash are one of the later ones to come out. So are they going to do all the parks property down in the Trinity as well, like Blair Park? On the boots, on the ground? Or do you know?
That would be a question for Chris McMaster and Jonathan Johnson. Those two guys, I know they were at the meeting. All I remember them saying is that they were going to have kind of a hybrid. They were going to do wherever they could get the vehicle in. They were going to do the ground LiDAR, and then where they couldn't get the vehicle, they were going to have to do boots on ground.
I was really glad to hear that. Karen Woodard gave the Urban Forest Advisory Committee a briefing on it on Tuesday, and I think last month as well. So I'm pretty much up to speed. I'm glad to see it's happening. I would like to see, of course, the city follow up with management after they complete the inventory, but that's another discussion, I guess.
Amen. But at least it's moving forward. Did we heard anything about that video that they wanted our assistance in making that Josh was going to do? Nope.
I don't know anything about it.
I think Preston was involved with that, Chris.
Oh, yes. So since Josh dropped out, I don't know what the status of that was. If they were gonna I think Preston's still supposed to do something. Preston is on vacation in Colorado this week, so that's why he's not with us.
Okay. Well, just checking in to make sure. I'll keep it on the agenda. Okay, Mike, could you talk to us about the web a little bit, Mr. Levy?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Susan. Just not a whole lot of updates, although I've been cleaning up the website and getting some new posts up there, as well as trying to also, if y'all would, to everybody that has events coming up, please send them my way so we can get them on the calendar. We do have, since we're getting ready to get into the fall season, I'm sure we have some events that'll be coming on around DFW. So please let me know so we can get them on the calendar. Also, as you see, we're still trying to work through Zoom. I think the registration thing is what's causing the issues. So I'm just going to change it to just the meeting link, so it shouldn't have to deal with the registration going forward. I think that was our problem, was throwing people off. So we will get that going for next meeting. That should hopefully make it a little bit smoother transition. But other than that, we really the things are good. The member portal state, we keep getting updates on that. And if you do have any articles that you would like to have out, about just very interesting things in the field, that's also something we would love to get out there to be able to share. So be thinking about that, brainstorm, and send that over to Susan and Mark and Chris, and we can get those things going. We'd love to be able to get out some content, for folks to be able to read. But anything, I'm here at your service, and if there's anything I can do, just let me know. We're trying the AI transcript. I had a little bit of trouble getting it started today, but I have other methods I can get the video from today. I will be able to get transcribed pretty quick. So so no fear there. We'll be able to get the notes and everything from today. But a lot of new things we're trying, excited, and that's really all my update.
Yeah, and you may not know this, but you have the ability, each one of the board members have the ability to set up Zoom meetings themselves.
Mhm.
And so these committees that we've set up, all their meetings can now be done by Zoom. So that's gonna make it a lot easier for us.
I had a quick question, Susan.
Yes, sir.
Michael mentioned events coming up for the calendar. I think we should post all of City of Dallas's branching out and branch out events.
Oh, yeah.
So I can get you the dates, the parks, if you'd like.
Nice.
So, we
Yeah.
do one per maintenance district in the fall and one in the spring. So all 12 dates are already planned and the sites are planned.
Awesome.
So I will get that info.
Because that helps you and that helps us.
Right. So I know here in my district, ours is November 9th, which is a Thursday. Usually, they start beginning of November and, run through March.
Right. In
I also put in the chat too. If you can send your event information over to my email at support@TBUFC, and I'll get that stuff up there if you have a date you already know of.
Perfect.
And we don't post just for the city of Dallas. If we have other municipalities that have environmentally related agendas, we'd love to post those too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Michael, the Historic Tree Coalition always has things going on and coming up.
Okay.
And of course, we work together on the Texas Tree Trails, but I don't know how much of that you have an interest in. A lot of it's on our website. And I can maybe get you signed up on our newsletter. The next one's gonna go out.
Okay.
There's 2 historic tree dedications coming up in September, I think on the 23rd, one in Granbury, another one kind of nearby. October, there is the Founders Oak down in New Braunfels will be formally recognized as a Comanche Council Oak. And there's another one, I think, in October and November as well. So just some of that stuff, I don't know if you have any interest, but there's a lot of stuff going on.
Steve, is there a place to sign up for like that newsletter you were mentioning?
Yeah, if you'll just send us off of our website, join as a member, you'll get it. We don't charge anything. We're one of the few groups out there that all volunteers. We don't charge anything for memberships or anything else. We're just glad to have the support.
Outstanding. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
That's the type of information we want to get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause,
Cool.
people might have come to our website and see it and attend your event, but maybe your event will bring them to our website. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. And one of the other things we hope to get done in August, now it looks like September, is Dallas will recognize its first group of historic trees formally by the council, which offers permanent protection for them. It'd take the entire vote of a council to cut them down. And there was one tree that already got through that we did recently, the Gateway Pecan. But there's a bunch of other ones that we hope to get through in September, offering a permanent protection for them. So for me personally, that's a very big deal, and I'm really glad to see it. Trees like Dealey Plaza, where a president was assassinated, and a lot of other sites that really deserve protection. We're getting very close to it.
That's awesome, Steve. You've worked your heart out for that and worked hard all these years. Finally, even if it's just 4 or 5 trees. How many are there?
Oh, there's 6 different sites.
6 different sites, excuse me.
Yeah, and Dealey Plaza is one of them. We're trying to get Ferris Plaza in there. That one might get delayed, but Moore Park was one that Chris McMaster in the Park Department recently put on the list. There's a few others. There's an Indian marker tree that is on California Crossing in that park.
Yeah.
So it's a few trees here and there, but it's also some groves of trees that really need to be protected. The Pioneer Cemetery right next to City Hall, for instance, that's an entire grove of post oaks right next to City Hall. Those really need to be protected as well. So I won't ramble, but there's at least 6 different sites.
Well, appreciate the information and, yeah, let's put that up on the website. And, we're gonna go over Texas Tree Tales as farther down the agenda. We've gone through the web update under social media. Right now, we're not doing anything on Facebook or Twitter or. So I don't know if anyone would like to step up and take over the social media spot and assist us. If not, we'll just rock along the way we're doing and then try to solicit someone to do that for us. Unless everybody just wants to jump up and want to do Facebook and Twitter and what else? See, I'm electronically detached, so we will work on the social media, and if nothing else, we'll approach it at the yearly meeting. Okay. Mark, Mr. Boating, would you tell us what's going on with the Urban Forestry Management Planning Committee? You have to unmute. There you
I
go.
don't have a whole lot to report on that right now, but we are going to be meeting next week to discuss the English and Spanish learning event. Does anybody want to be on this committee besides myself, Susan, Mike Sills, and then who else do we have? Amy Heath. Now's your chance. Okay. So we'll go ahead and continue with that. I know we do have that one planned for the fall. We're just trying to look at other schedules. We're trying to time it so that we're not, doing that while another big event is going on. And the other one is
We don't have much leeway, Mark, on
what's
that.
that?
That bilingual workshop, we don't have much leeway on the dates because the speakers are only here for a short amount of time. And so we're just kind of
Okay.
tack on to what they're doing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't talked to Amy about when she wanted to do it, but it sounded like September, October, right?
I believe it's February.
Is it February? Okay. Well, I'm meeting with her to talk about all this stuff, February. And the other one is the follow-up to our previous workshop. I think, Megan, you gave us CEUs for that one, right? Was I in communication
Yes,
with
you
you?
did.
Yes.
They were
Yeah,
available.
we did that. We
You did a
pre-approved them.
great job. I mean, it went
Yeah.
very smoothly.
Thanks
And
for helping us with that.
well,
Yeah,
and
of course.
the registration on the website, that was really awesome too.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And
So,
I was going to tell you before I forgot that I was talking to Mac Martin, and he was offering the West Texas, one of the councils that he works with has the ability to take money like we do, and he was offering their services. And I said, "Well, honey, we can do that now. We got a website. We can do that. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool, and we can help other organizations too, Megan, and we're open to that if needed. If you
Sounds good.
because we can help with registration. That's what I'm saying. They have automated registration, and
Okay.
only charge them like an arm and a leg. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And then, so I wanted to follow up on the Urban Forest Master Plan Workshop. Last time we did it, we flew a couple people in from out of town. I don't mind doing that, but I also think that we have plenty capable people, even within our organization as well, that can do some of the talks. So is there anybody that, like the city of Dallas, you just finished your Urban Forest Master Plan, would Chris or somebody from the city of Dallas be willing to, or for anybody here, be willing to speak in that workshop that
Well,
has experience?
I'm going to do benefit of trees.
Okay, because it's going to be a different menu. Yeah, you didn't get to do your presentation, Susan.
Huh?
Because your presentation wasn't on your USB stick.
Oh, okay.
So, but the topics are going to be different than last time,
Okay.
but more geared towards an actual, showing them what a master plan looks like and how we use it in our parks, why it's important for cities. The first one was more an introduction to it. There's a lot of information in there. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I talked to Mac Martin. He said he'd like to come and assist. He'd like, he's available to assist us with development too.
Okay.
So he might be able to help us with speakers. We can definitely approach him for, an agenda subjects for the agenda.
Okay. And then maybe even one of the Chris's from the city of Dallas, since your master plan is fresh, maybe we could tag team since Plano has one as well, and kind of talk about our plans, together.
That's a good idea.
And then
So,
we'll look for speakers too. We'll look at Stephen F. Austin again and some of the closer universities to see if anyone else wants to come out and speak.
so you'll send out a link for the meeting?
Yeah. Do you guys want me to send it to everybody? And if you want to come, you come, or
That work?
you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll send it out. The first meeting, we have a list of topics that we want to do that we did from last year. We just need to
Yes.
go over them, decide on them, decide who's going to speak, and then schedule a date. Once we schedule that date, that kind of puts pressure on us to get that thing set up.
Okay,
That's it.
good job. It's gonna be a nice, a good workshop. We need it too. The Speakers Bureau, Mike has been in the process of, like categorizing all the stuff that we have. In addition, he's, downloaded all of, my video, gardening shows that are available. So there's a lot of information that's going to be available as soon as we can figure out what context to put it in. Right, Mike?
Hey, so is that for like creating brand new videos?
We can, yes. That's what we
I wouldn't mind being involved with that and helping out with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think we need more content out there.
absolutely.
Even easy stuff for homeowners, how to select a tree at a nursery. How do I prune my tree? How do I water my tree? I mean, there's some basic stuff that I know people have done, but
Yeah, we could build some playlists out of that and get the videos and build playlists, and we can link them even to the site if we wanted to.
yeah. And even Texas A&M Forest Service has stuff, but I don't know if we want our own branding or if we want to use some of that. We could start using some of that stuff in the beginning and then gradually move over to our own stuff.
Right. There's no need to reinvent the wheel right at first.
Yeah. But I'll help on that committee.
Okay, I got you down. Also, you've been recorded.
Got it.
Texas Tree Trail update, Mr. Hauser. I think we got some of that already, really clicking along.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the Forest Service does have some pretty good information and videos. So does the National Arbor Day Foundation has a couple of good videos on tree planting, just so that you know. So there's a lot of good information out there. It's just getting it up on our website where people can access it. Texas Tree Trails, it's been kind of slow. Josh Good, I think, had taken on 5 or 6 trees he was going to measure. So I guess that's kind of out. Most of the other volunteers slowed down when it got really hot. So hopefully we can pick back up. We do need more people out looking at them. So if the shade keepers, once they're trained, can help out, that would be a great help as well. We still have probably 70 or more trees to look at. So it doesn't involve a whole lot. You don't even hardly have to be an arborist as long as you know how to identify the tree. Actually, when I send you out, we're already telling you what the species is. We just need you to measure it and take some photographs. So pretty easy deal. Hopefully we can get some more help as it cools down this fall.
That's great, Steve. I mean, here we go, right? I don't know what to tell you about Josh. I'm not sure if he's even still in town, but he didn't send me his personal contact information. Did anybody else receive Josh's personal contact information?
I can check. I might have his phone number or his cell phone number. I can check with Sam Hill. That's where he was working. I can check with Sam.
No, and I have his cell, but I'm not sure which one it was. I don't know if he had two. He was just said he would send me his personal information. But we'll reach out to him. And we're under the Texas Urban Forestry involvement. When I spoke with Mac Martin, he actually is over the Texas Urban Forestry Council. And he said they meet once a year. And they're gonna meet this winter, but it hasn't been set up yet. And that the Texas Forest Service representative like Mike wouldn't be a good fit, that we need to have someone that's not with the Texas Forest Service. And Mr. Boating said that he would like to approach that position unless someone else would like to take that position. And I believe they meet in person. And basically, he's told me they're just really working with the license plate money that they bring in, but they're oh, Steve, you don't want to hear this, baby. The past treasurer absconded with $17,000 or $18,000 worth of money, so they're trying to build back up, and they
Are
need.
you kidding me again?
Yes, sir.
That was many years ago. I became their treasurer because the previous executive director walked off with all the money.
Right.
I couldn't even find any records of their accounts and things. So I got that all put back together, thought we were going the right direction. And we worked very hard for like 2 years to get that license plate done. Because back then it wasn't just fill out a form. We had to lobby the state governor and everybody else to try to get it passed. Once we finally got it passed, we thought it was a big deal. And then a year later, they said, oh, now all you got to do is fill out a form.
I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry. I knew you. But
I'm sorry.
Okay. So
That's what you get for leaving, Steve. You should have stayed.
are you saying that you would like to volunteer again, Stephen?
Oh, God, no. I've been there, done that a long time ago.
Me too. As past president, I'd like to pass it on to Mr. Mark Boating has graciously said that he would accept this unless someone else would like to step up at this point. Jonathan,
Sue,
what are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm listening to you.
Are you ready to step up?
I think when Mark steps up he'll slide Jonathan into vice VP spot, give him some training, and then he'll be ready to take over from Mark.
I'm gonna need both of y'all to stick to, y'all's own business.
Well, at least you came to the meeting, darling.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, think about it because eventually you're going to have to step up. Long-term and continued planning. Most of this goes through Mr. Sills, and he reaches out to these cities and people continuously. And when we go through the urban forest management planning workshop, these are the main cities that we're going to focus on. Okay. And then our next meeting is September 28th at 12 p.m. via Zoom, unless Mark would like to change that because I won't be here.
28th is good.
All right, at 12 p.m. Anything else to add or discuss, guys?
Did everyone like the 12 p.m. time?
I do.
Yes.
Everyone okay with it?
6.
I like it.
I mean, thank you, Marion, for coming, and Jonathan and Blake and Chris. Adam, you haven't said much. Okay. And he's still not, but we appreciate each and every one of you coming, and we look forward to seeing you. I guess I'll see you in October, but everybody else get together in September. Okay.
There was another participant that I guess they're off. Hadn't seen before. Did anybody catch their name or? There was,
I'm sure it'll be in the logs.
Is that Heather and
yeah.
Heather
I've
Amber?
never met, I didn't know them, but they
Oh, I
signed
know
off.
them. I know them. They're great.
Oh, okay.
They're, it's great.
Hey,
Um,
Chris, I sent you
the
over.
city of, I can't remember. But they were also at the Urban Forest Management Planning and they come to our conferences. They're very supportive. We need to reach out to them personally.
Here they put in the chat, they said Heather and I have to go to another meeting. Keep up the good work, everyone. Okay, so they did. They put in the chat before they left.
Yeah, I saw that. And then I couldn't type and sent some crazy stuff.
Hey, Chris,
Anyway,
did you get that other chat that I sent you for a vendor?
Oh, I see it. Yeah. Milwaukee Tool.
Yeah.
Okay. You got, well, you wanna contact, can you contact them and see if they'll support saluting branches?
I'll get with Chris and he knows the contacts, so I'll
Yeah.
get him.
If you
get him
guys,
with you.
if you guys will be since you already have a relationship with them, please reach out and see what if they'll donate something to saluting branches. That'd be good.
I'll let
That'd
my
be great.
manager know.
Okay, thank you.
awesome. Awesome. Well, if there's nothing else to add, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Yay, Chris. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. It's been wonderful, guys. Trust.